Reverend Don Lewis, coming to you from the beautiful metaverse, and more specifically, beautiful Danville, Illinois, the homeland of the Correllian tradition. And today is Thursday on Midday with Reverend Don, when we theoretically do interviews. We don't have one every Thursday, but we have a guest today. His Eminence, the Most Reverend Phoenix Coffin Williams, first priest of the Correllian tradition. And so we have both of the first priests of the Correllian tradition. I retired in office, and Phoenix active in daily duties, and together in one place. And Phoenix asked if he could come on today after seeing yesterday's broadcast. How are you today?
I am doing pretty well. It's been a great day so far.
I'm glad.
I got some time this morning. Work was light. I got to watch yesterday's Midday because I couldn't watch it live. And I was like, yo, this is a phenomenal conversation. And I thought it was a great opportunity to take the discussion about karma maybe a little bit deeper, highlight some stuff that doesn't always get addressed when talking about it as a theological concept.
Yes, indeed. And as you know, if you follow Midday with Reverend Don, you can chat with us on whatever platform you happen to be on, and it will show up in the chat room. And hello to Bradley in the chat room. It's good to see you.
Hi, Bradley.
As Correllians, so hello to Janet in the chat room. We have a very specific way of looking at karma through attachment and at looking at the Wiccan read. And, you know, as I was saying yesterday, the different religions that venerate karma all have different ideas. There's nothing odd in that. But the idea of karma through attachment is not at all a departure from any mainstream understanding. And hello to Deb in the chat room, who is from your particular temple. And Lord Phoenix seems to be frozen, or I'm seeing him as frozen. But we will get that corrected here presently. And it might be necessary to go out and come back in. I don't know. But we're going to talk a little more about karma today. And who knows what else we'll talk about. I think this broadcast has already become known for a wide-ranging subject matter. And Bradley says, I love the face he's stuck on. And hello to Anna in the chat room. Actually, it was a good face to stick on if you're going to. And we're going to have Lord Phoenix come in a second time and see if that will correct the problem. And hello to Chad in the chat room. Good to see you, Chad. So, you know, lots of things are moving, lots of things are transpiring in the world. I kind of felt after yesterday's broadcast that I'd been a little self-indulgent in talking about myself as part of these issues on karma and the Wiccan read and so forth. But the reaction that people had to the broadcast was very positive. So I'm very pleased. And hello to Lori in the chat room. Hello to Renee in the chat room. It's good to see you. And I'm sure Lord Phoenix will be back in a moment. You know, I think that while we're waiting for Lord Phoenix to return, yeah, I think I'll talk a little bit more on the subject that we were talking about yesterday. We were talking about karma, we were talking about Wiccan read, and we were talking about leadership. Hello to Mary in the chat room. Good to see you, Mary. You know, I've often over the years been asked about leadership. Oh, and Lord Phoenix is back. And there he is. Welcome.
Thanks.
Sometimes that happens with cameras freezing.
Yeah. So I'm back, fixed it, switched to a new wireless network to the 5G, so we should be good.
There you go.
So karma, attachment, all that jazz from last week, I thought that was phenomenal. And a lot of the stuff that you were talking about made me think of almost the only document that I've read about karma, everything else being kind of like supplementary work and like other theological perspectives. But the Bhagavad Gita being the only thing that came specifically from that area that I
Mhm,
have consumed to help me understand karma, presented it in a remarkable light that I think is really realistic.
mhm,
But combining the idea with karma, and the fact that it was also a means of maintaining social control in India and in that area is also very enlightening to me and also helps me understand a little bit more about the way karma functions
mhm,
and about the way that people use karma. I think
mhm.
this is an essential conversation because as Corellians, we seek to understand things at their nature, and that helps us perfect how to use it functionally.
Yes, indeed. And it
Karma,
must be functional to be worthwhile.
yes. What I understood from the Bhagavad Gita and through becoming a yoga teacher is that karma, of course, is a force. It's a stabilizing and balancing force. And it works through attachment, and we develop attachments based on how we behave and interact with other living things, with other non living things, with things that have a philosophical life, and with things that actually have a tangible life related to breath. All of these things represent attachments. The other way we can generate karma is by inaction, by not doing anything when something must be done.
Absolutely.
The way this was demonstrated in the Bhagavad Gita is through a long, not even that long, but through an epic where the main character was a prince named Arjuna, and he had a trusted advisor who was Vishnu, the god Vishnu in human form. And these interactions illuminated the very nature of how to not pick up attachments that you don't need while also making sure you're doing the best when you have to make hard decisions. The setting in the Bhagavad Gita was during a battle in which Prince Arjuna had to fight his own family members who had a subtle claim to authority, who had a subtle claim to land, but it wasn't fully right. It wasn't completely righteous. And his family members, his cousins, were using battle tactics and war to try to take control over things that they didn't have a, a strong claim on. And so what the advisor, what God Vishnu said was, yeah, of course, war is a generator of bad karma, but in this context, in this situation where people are misbehaving, where people are hurting others, where people are misusing power, you, someone who has power, you, someone who has an army, you, someone who has love and has a responsibility, you must act. Otherwise, you generate painful karma for yourself.
And this is so true. And so often in the Wiccan community, that aspect is misunderstood. Um, if you can prevent harm and do not, it's the same as doing harm. And we want to say hello to Sir Ebony in the chat room, who says hello to us.
Hi, Sir Ebony. Good to hear from you.
And Magical Mermaid, if we haven't already said hello, hello, Magical Mermaid.
Hey, Magical Mermaid.
But it's very true that if you stand by and let the bad thing be done, you're part of the bad thing. Admittedly, there are times there's really nothing you can do, but if you can, that's when it becomes an issue.
I think in those moments of powerlessness, making an observation is the powerful thing to do.
Mhm. Yes. And if you're a respected person, not saying anything is not the right choice. Now, waiting for the right moment is another matter. But to simply not speak is to be part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about the evils of society, this is a primary case. And the things that have moved society forward have sometimes been fighting in the streets, but they've also sometimes been for respected people to step forward and say, no, this is wrong. We need to do this other thing that's right. Even when they were ahead of their time and were going against the mainstream, but they're doing it often changed that stream. And hello to Bradley in the chat room who says, I 100% agree with this. And I have to say, and you already know this, or you will soon, because now you're sharing my office as first priest. But in the 44 years I've been first priest, I have faced so many challenging situations. And I was fortunate that and hello to Mary Hawk in the chat room who says hello to us. When I became first priest, we were a small familial tradition. It took a while before I had to face these big, hard things, and I was so naive when I first encountered them. But yeah, I mean, early on, in my second decade as first priest, one of the things that came up, I used to hear people say all the time that they felt that this person's actions or that person's actions cheapened their position as clergy. And it was over nonsense. It was a difference in opinion, a difference in liturgy, had nothing to do with their clergy. But there was a particular high priest in Chicago who was known for assaulting women. Ignoring that really did cheapen people's priesthood. And taking a stand against that was one of the first big challenges in a moral sense that I faced. And I'm very much indebted to Sir Edward for really making clear how important that was to me at that time, and showing the right way to handle it. Because just being quiet was not the way. Keeping the peace was not the way. Saying, no, this is wrong, and by the way, ladies, you should be aware if you don't already know. Because I personally saw him physically attack a woman. There was no question. It was amazing how many people refused to listen, although a good number did. Mm-hmm. But when you see these things, you do have to stand up. There are different ways sometimes, but you have to, and you also have to have your sense of proportion and know the difference between, well, in this case, I saw this man attack a 17-year-old girl by taking her by the throat and lifting her off the ground. And I was not the only witness. And hello to Brian, who says, afternoon fam, much love, Lord Phoenix and Lord Don. Thank you, Brian. But you have to know your proportions versus those people who are upset about other people's opinions or differences in liturgy or teaching. I have to say, in the 44 years I was first priest, I was called upon, together with Lady Crystal, on occasion, to remove people from the tradition. But whenever possible, we tried every diplomatic solution first, unless it were a criminal type of action, which of course is a totally different thing. And we did occasionally face that. The Waco Tohausen case was horrible, and we took immediate action. And what we did is we suspended the person who was accused of that act and removed them when they pled guilty. I do feel that there must be a guilty verdict, one way or another, to actually say. But we suspended them immediately. And but that was an accusation of child abuse. It was a terrible accusation, not something that happened in the tradition. in that sense, it did not involve us, but it was one of our priesthood, so it did. And we took that action. But that is not what we would have done if he had simply disagreed with us. And you will remember another prominent high priest who was once the high priest of Spiral Light Temple, who vehemently disagreed with us with me on many things, and even went so far as to picket us at one of our own events. And what did we do? We spoke to him, we dealt with him diplomatically. This went on for a couple of years. And we did not throw him out of the tradition because he had the right to disagree with us. He left the tradition because nobody was agreeing with him, but that's another matter. And hello to Kazan in the chat room, who says hello to both of us. It's good to see you, Kazan. I mean, I can think of many other situations. I can think of a couple of cases where people had questionable behaviors, and we tried our best to get them to go through counseling to resolve it. If after that it continued to spiral out of hand, we had to take action. But the idea of throwing someone out simply because you disagree with them would never have occurred with me or Crystal. It's not what you do. People have a right to disagree. Or otherwise, what have you got? Even to argue with you. And I don't understand how some people in positions of leadership think differently. Because every act you take as a leader establishes a precedent. And I don't know how you feel about that, but that's how I feel about that. And that it's a huge responsibility. You know, people used to complain about all the layers in the Corellian state robes. They were there for a reason, to remind you as you rose in rank of your greater responsibility. And the first priesthood had the most layers, which you will soon be burdened with. I believe you're currently wearing your Watan robe still, but
yep.
There's another layer coming. But you know, if you can't wear an extra layer, how are you going to handle the actual responsibility? Plus, if you happen to be doing ritual in the winter in Illinois, they're very welcome. But that's beside the point. But you had brought up a very interesting point earlier about the point that I brought up about Smog the Dragon.
Yes, so Smog the Dragon, I think very many people recognize the iconography of the dragon as representing the grand family, like the great family.
It is one of their symbols.
Yes, and I think that in the context of karma, in the context of inviting or subtly or subconsciously or unconsciously inviting danger or harm or any kind of chaotic or undesired energy underneath or into your shield. That when that happens, things get really unpredictable, right? Like when when foul energy, when toxic energy, when quote unquote evil energy, unbalanced energy, trickster energy, any of these things that we want to label them, anything that, you know, is going to be in temporary opposition, when it gets too close, it provokes very unpredictable and dangerous reactions to return to homeostasis. And the problem is, from the outside, when you see someone who has been provoked behaving in this way, a lot of times you don't understand why this is happening. But realistically, what you are seeing is every attempt to restore the balance.
Yes, indeed.
And when that comes to generating karma, number one, the actions that you take, maybe you can use the 3 doors. Is it necessary? Is it true? Is it compassionate? Great. If it's all those things and it still looks severe, then you're just not supposed to be messed with on that level. When it comes to recognizing this unbalanced energy, because it can come from nowhere. It can be in the form of friends. It can be in the form of family, people that you trust. They, you let them in, they coming in for a barbecue, a cookout or whatever. They get a little bit too drunk, and now next thing you know, it's a fight in the family, it's a fight in the cookout, and now you got to call the cops on the cousin.
Yeah.
Right? People don't know how to act when they get certain places, or people assume things inappropriately, and that really gets them messed up. I'm trying real hard not to swear here. Things, and they want to start messing around, and then the finding out is the natural consequence.
That's true.
Learning how to recognize what is harm and what is the natural flow, what is the Tao, what is the way of how energy is going to play out, is also essential to recognizing the nature of karma.
It's very true.
And whether we like it or not, it is what it is, and it will have to be dealt with. Karma. Choices will have to be made. It's unfortunate. I like the Bhagavad Gita. Like, it is one of those real world kind of things. I find it more relevant than a lot of stuff that I find in the Bible. But evil can catch you off guard right in the pink meat.
It can.
The arrows that are thrown into that place where the scale is not can seem like betrayal. Like, holy moly, what is this? What are we doing? And I guess I just got to remember, when the scale falls off there, that's the place where you add energy protecting.
Yes, indeed.
That's where you fortify.
And in the end, we can only do our next right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was speaking yesterday about certain situations in which I felt very betrayed.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think I need to actually be specific. I think it should be pretty obvious. But I don't know if that's true, and it doesn't matter. Because for me, the next steps are simply to carry on my life and do my next right things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm going to do. I am very disappointed in certain things I've seen, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I never expected that level of behavior from those directions. When people, I was not stupid. And I'm the one who made the choices that allowed the activities. So I can't complain too loud, because in the end, certain people rose to certain positions of power. I was promoting their careers. However, to the extent that certain bad behaviors that have been enacted is still their karma. But I still believe in the idea that everything happens for its reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what we're actually seeing is an evolution, which is being spurred by bad behavior. But I know that for me, the next step is an evolutionary one.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea I had that I was going to retire and lead a quiet, simple life is, not made possible by the behaviors I'm talking. If anything, I've been busier than I ever was before, just in different ways. And that's okay. I'd be bored if I wasn't. But I do feel that we're looking at a moment of spiritual evolution brought about by someone who is really behaving like a classic villain.
Mm-hmm.
I know most people aren't seeing it, but read between the lines. It's happening.
Yeah,
and people are reacting.
That's how villains work.
It's
you gotta, like, it's one of those, if you know, if not, it looks non-problematic. Deals with some hypocrisy, some subtle manipulations, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah. But again, spirit moves things where spirit wants them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have faith in spirit.
Yeah. And within the context of a spiritual evolution, and this being the age of Aquarius and moving into like that level of responsibility, just clocking problematic behavior that just needs to be left in Pisces is necessary. Like it's
Yeah.
one of the things that we have to do as a part of the great work, right? You know, we saw it, it's bad behavior, it's hurtful, it's painful. As the midwives of this age and making sure that, you know, now having brought magic into the next age, it's really here, it's solidified. You can get crystals and magic everywhere. Making
Yeah.
sure that its roots continue to go deep also means pruning back the stuff that's hurtful, like cleaning out the wounds with the peroxide and the alcohol and a cotton swab, put the band-aid over it, walk the rest of it off because nothing is handicapped, right?
Yeah.
We're resilient. We've been resilient this entire time as an individual person, as a group of people, who've been marginalized in society, right? Like
Yes.
nothing is happening that is not recoverable.
It's
And the
true.
responsibility to care for it appropriately and address it appropriately is still upon us as the nature of the work in Aquarius.
Absolutely. And Serenity has made an interesting comment in the chat room that maybe in the character of a prophecy, though I don't think she meant it that way. But we must remember that it was pointed out that change is the only constant, and those who choose to ignore that fact will find this time of evolution very difficult. And sadly, I believe that's exactly true.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, the truth is, if I could eliminate difficulty for everyone, that would be the choice I would make.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people's difficulty often comes through their own behavior, certainly in the situation that I'm obliquely referring to.
Mm-hmm.
And would have been so easy to avoid. But there you go. So we're more or less at the end of our half hour. Is there any last thing you'd like to say?
One last thing, when it comes to karma, one of the ways to make sure that you're addressing karma and attachments at all times, maybe some people haven't looked at it yet, but like we have 9 Corellian virtues that really do a great job at mirroring the different philosophies that were put forward in the Bhagavad Gita. Right, so we talk about non-harming, we talk about non-stealing, we talk about non-lying, we talk about not attaching to things that don't necessarily belong to you, and we talk about using your energy the right way. Like those are all directly from the Bhagavad Gita, but there's a direct parallel to compassion, to honesty, to modesty, to temperance, and the other virtues that are put forward in the 3rd degree. So if you want to really look at the essence of karma and how you deal with it, get the updated version of the 3rd degree book so that you can have a whole lesson on that and apply some critical thinking.
Absolutely. And you can get that at CorellianPublishing.com. And they're in stock. They would ship right away.
Thank you so much for letting me contribute to this conversation.
Thank you for coming on. Hopefully you can do so again soon.
Yes, I'm doing it Saturday.
Yes, indeed. That will be lovely. And thank you everyone for joining me. It's been an interesting week. I was meeting with Lady Crystal yesterday, speaking with Lord Phoenix today, speaking with my son this afternoon. Many members of the High Corel family are gathering and conferring at this time. And just having many conversations. And it's been an interesting week. Thank you, Lord Phoenix, for joining us. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I love you all. I love you, nephew.
Love you too.
Let us close with our prayer, as we always do. Divine Mother Goddess, Divine Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you for all that you do for us in our lives, and we ask you to help us to be mindful of our acts and their consequences. Help us to be mindful and to become mindful of both what we see and what we do not, so that we may make informed decisions as we go forward. Help us to see the missing scale and understand how it may be healed. And help us to move forward in the best way as always. Beloved Mother Goddess, beloved Father God, beloved ancestors, we thank you with great love and with respect, and knowing you're always with us, but from respect, we thank you for your presence, and you be blessed now and always. And I thank you for your presence. Thank you, Lord Felix. Thank you, everyone. I love you all. See you tomorrow, and may you be blessed now and